Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from the FIDE World Rapid Championship. I mentioned that I will be returning to this one once we end the 3 days of Rapid and 2 days of Blitz. It is a game from the final round of the FIDE World Rapid Championship between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Vincent Keymer. Now, going into the final round, 3 players were tied for first place with 9 points. Vladislav Artemiev, Vincent Keymer and Magnus Carlsen were tied for first place, which means that anyone can still take it. Artemiev has lost to Fabiano Caruana in the final round, so he is definitely out of the race. And Magnus already finished his game. He defeated Abdusatorov. It was an incredible game, and well, now it all depends on the game Vincent versus Maxime. And as Magnus finished his game, he of course went to this board, and Magnus was watching it for the better part of the game as he finished his game much sooner. So let's check it out and let's see how the game went, as it's for a Rapid, it's an extremely top level game. You guys will enjoy it, and then let's see what happens. So Maxime with the white pieces opens with e4. We have e5 by Vincent, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. Maxime goes for the Ruy Lopez, a6, Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, and now knight to f6. We have we have castles, bishop to e7, and now d3. We have b5, bishop to b3, and d6. So this is very standard stuff. Pawn to a3 and now knight to a5. Going after that, bishop on b3, bishop to a2. And of course, pawn to c5. We have knight to c3, bishop to e6, and now bishop to g5. So this is a top-level theory, something you would expect out of a classical game. We have castles by Vincent, and now the top move here is bishop captures on f6. Maxime mixes it up a little bit. He plays pawn to b4, which I believe is might be even stronger, but who knows. We have knight back to c6, and now knight to d5. Maxime keeps the light square bishop alive, as the light square bishop is the favorite one in the Ruy Lopez. And here you have to be careful. Like you might consider knight captures on d5, but this would maybe give white a bit too much. After e captures on d5, both of your pieces are hanging, and then let's say bishop captures, d captures on e6, f captures, bishop captures, and now of course king to h8 and b captures on c5. So you would get a position that's pretty wild. Black would have the open semi-open f-file for the attack, but the problem is, let's say a4, you want to mess up black's pawn structure here, and the white keeps this monster bishop for the rest of the game. And from experience, you know that this could not, well, probably will not end well for black. So instead, bishop captures on d5 by Vincent, e captures on d5, and now knight to d4, offering a trade of knights. B captures on c5, knight captures on f3, a nice Zwischenzug, queen captures, and only now d captures on c5. And now, as you can see, Maxime does have a passed d pawn, but Vincent does have the a, b, and c pawn, and he will push them to try and create a passed pawn of his own. Now, the known moves here are rook f to e1, and yes, we are still in theory. Rook f to e1 and rook a to e1 are known moves, which directly puts pressure on the e5 pawn. But Maxime went a4 right away, and it is now, as of move 17, that we have a completely new game. So it's a move that you always play when black has this very nice expansion on the queen side, to mess it up. And now Vincent goes knight back to e8. He offers the trade of dark square bishops, and he wants to reposition to knight to d6. So bishop captures, we have queen captures, a captures on b5, a captures on b5. But now the problem is those rook e1 moves that we were discussing do not come with tempo. The queen is already on e7 guarding the pawn. So queen to e3, putting pressure on both of them, and just knight back to f6. We have bishop to b3, offering a trade of rooks, and now queen to d6, blockading the d5 pawn and also putting pressure to it. Rook captures on a8, rook captures, and now rook to e1, going after the e5 pawn, so sort of offering a trade here, but rook back to e8. Vincent just defends it, and now pawn to c4. Now, Maxime would very much like it if Vincent would trade here. This would give him a connected pass pawn, and he could shift the bishop to another diagonal where it will be more useful. But of course, Vincent said nope, just pawn to b4, and now both Maxime and Vincent have a nice passed pawn. We have f4, very nicely played by Maxime, the absolute strongest move, and it seems like you might be able to capture, but of course queen captures on e8 will be too deadly. just captures, captures, and captures. And okay, it's not checkmate, but once you trade, Maxime would be up a full bishop and of course completely winning. So after f4 we have pawn to e4, now saying okay, how do you deal with this, and bishop to c2, now with the idea of just capturing here, but now comes pawn to g5, and g5 is a monster move by Vincent, freeing up the g7 square for the king. And now this definitely is a threat. You don't care about queen captures on d8 anymore because you don't have to worry about checkmate, and you will not have to give back your queen with queen to f8. So d captures on e4, Maxime grabs the full center, g captures on f4, and now if you play queen to f3, or if you move the queen somewhere else, Vincent will put his queen on e5. This will completely lock the pawns on light squares. Maxime would have a light square bishop. This would just be terrible, terrible for him. Vincent would have all the time in the world to set up his pieces in whatever way he wants. So instead, Maxime goes for e5 right away, and now we have a trade. F captures on e3, e captures on d6, and now rook to a8. Very nicely played. And now what's the idea here? Is this e3 pawn really up for grabs? Well, if you capture the pawn on e3, then you get rook to a1 with check, king f2, and knight to g4, forking the king and the rook. So of course you can't play that. Bishop to f5 now guards the g4 square and also puts pressure on d7, so d7 can now be played. And here Vincent plays something incredible. Knight back to e8. So for the second time, Vincent properly moves his knight backwards, and now pawn to d7. Knight back to d6, and here rook captures on e3. And you have to be very careful. You can't really go after the bishop. If you capture the bishop, then just rook to e8 check, and black resigns. You either win the rook, or you get a queen into the game, or both. So instead, after rook captures on e3, Vincent goes king to f8. Bishop back to d3 now guards the c4 pawn, and rook to d8. You have to eliminate this pawn before doing anything else. Rook to h3 going for the h7 pawn, and now rook captures on d7. We have rook captures on h7, and now rook to a7. Now the knight on d6 is much stronger than the bishop on d3. Even though it's a nice bishop, it's currently stuck guarding this c4 pawn, so this is pretty bad. We have rook h8, king e7, and now king to f2. Maxime, of course, would love to trade places of this king and bishop, and he would now start to enjoy starting to advance his past h pawn to victory. So rook to a2 check, and now Maxime plays king to e3, which is definitely the correct idea. If you play king f3 and you try to keep an eye on the g2 pawn, then the bishop is undefended. Now rook to d2 can be played, and let's say bishop to f1. Now you go after the c4 pawn, and knight captures on c4 is a problem. And if bishop to d3 attacking the rook, rook c3, king e2, and now again you will capture on c4, giving Vincent the two connected passed pawns, and this is very much winning for black. So Maxime does the correct choice. He goes for king to e3, rook captures on g2, and now h4. He gives up a little bit of material to start advancing his passed pawn a little bit faster. Rook to g3 check, king to e2, and now rook to h3. Vincent puts his rook behind the passed pawn. Instead of this, you could also consider a nice king f6, king e5, king d4 maneuver, but this is also perfectly fine. We have h5, pawn to b3 now. We have rook to b8. Maxime has to put his rook behind the passed pawn. And now pawn to b2, showing that the pawn cannot be captured because of rook h2 check winning the rook. So here instead we have king to d2. Now comes rook captures on h5, rook captures on b2, and rook to h2 check. Vincent properly assesses the position that the knight against the bishop endgame will be winning for him. King c3, rook captures on b2, king captures, and now king to f6. The light square bishop here is much worse than the knight. The knight always has this tension against the c4 pawn, and the poor bishop is stuck defending it. And the c5 pawn is on a dark square, so the light square bishop really has no targets. We have king to c3, king to e5, and now king to d2. We have king to d4, and now king to e2, offering the c4 pawn, but Vincent plays it properly. He advances the pawn to f5. We have king to d2, and now pawn to f4, king to e2, f3 with check. Now, of course, king captures runs into king captures on d3, and white resigns. So here, after f3 with check, king to d2 was played, and now you have this position, and you really have to enjoy what a great position it is. There is not one move, there is more than one move that is winning for Vincent. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find this idea while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always thinking about that knight. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the winning idea here is literally any move with the knight back. Knight b7 or knight c8 or knight to e8 or knight to f7. Basically, you just want to waste a move. Once you waste a move, the position is completely winning for you. Now, the way you figure this out is that if you win the e4 square with your king, or if you win the e3 square with your king, you win the game, because then you can go behind. You can put your king, let's say, on g2, and you can advance this pawn to victory. Now, the problem is white would be without a move. Let's say you play knight f7 here. How can white react? You can't really move the bishop somewhere along this diagonal because you lose the c4 pawn. So, of course, you're going to play bishop to f1. Now, by moving the bishop here, you win the e4 square for your king. Or you don't have to play this. You could move the king, but then where do you move the king to? To c2? That's just weird. Then you give up the e3 square, and then, of course, it's completely winning. So, best is bishop to f1. Now, you win this e4 square for your king. Once the bishop returns, king to f4. And now, after bishop to f1, you bring the knight back into the game. Bishop to d3. Now pawn to f2 is a completely different story. King to e2. You're going to play king to g3. Nothing white can do about this. King to f1. Now king to f3. The white king is completely boxed in, and there is no good move here. Bishop e2 check will be met with king to e3, and now there are no moves. If you move the king, you lose the bishop. If you move the bishop, you again lose the bishop. If you move the bishop somewhere else, you lose the c4 pawn. And one last trick you could try is, let's say, bishop to f3, sort of trying to achieve stalemate, but of course Vincent would not do this. He would capture on c4, create another pass pawn, the d6 square is guarded, and easily win the game. But as they were both very low on time, Vincent advanced the pawn to f2 right away. He played pawn to f2, and now it seems like it doesn't really do all that much for white. If king e2, then you can just bring a queen into the game and win the bishop. But Maxime shows that now it is just a dead draw. Bishop to f1, and now even though you win the c4 pawn, there are no ways for you to win the game. Knight captures on c4, king to e2, now comes king captures on d5, and now king captures on f2, and there is no way for black to cross the c4 square with the pawn. King to d4 was played, bishop to h3, king to d3, but now just bishop to e6. We have knight to e5, and now king to e1, knight to f3 check, king to d1, and now knight to d4. We have bishop to g8, and now knight to b5, king to c1, and now knight to c3. Trying to get that king to d4, knight to d5 setup so the pawn can be advanced, but of course even this will not do anything. Bishop h7 check, king to d4, bishop to g8, now comes knight to d5, but just king d2. And now after c4, Vincent managed to advance that pawn, but Maxime just shows that there's no point in this. Bishop captures, king captures, and it was in this position on move 65 that Maxime and Vincent agreed to a draw, as there is nothing more to be done here. So it's a pretty standard king and pawn endgame, and of course you will not be able to get that pawn to become a queen. At some point you will stalemate the white king, and of course everyone knows this. So yeah, pretty incredible stuff. One way I was watching the live commentary in this position that Vincent could have made it easier for him is not to waste a tempo with f5. He could have played f6, and this would allow him to at some point gain that extra tempo that he needs with the pawn, sort of to outmaneuver the light square bishop and the king. But who would think of this? I mean, you just push f5, f4, f3, because you know the position is winning. You just didn't play it out to perfection, and then it ended in a draw. But yeah, that's why Vincent took second place. He might have taken second place even if he won this game, because then he would go into a playoff against Magnus Carlsen, which would be very, very intense. But he would definitely get a chance at winning first place in the FIDE World Rapid Championship. But yeah, we get Magnus in first, Vincent in second, and of course Fabiano Caruana, who defeated Vladislav Artemiev in the final round, in third place. And as you've seen in Blitz, Magnus also won the Blitz section. Hikaru Nakamura got second place, and same amount of points. Third place was Haik Martirosyan, so very, very incredible run by him as well. But yeah, this is one of the games that I really wanted to show you. It was really intense, and Magnus was watching the game the entire time. And I believe exactly at this point where Vincent messed it up here after this, he just advanced the pawn to f2. Magnus knew it was a draw, and you could see a huge, huge smile on his face, knowing that he just became the world rapid champion. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is not my last video of 2022. I will release another one, and it will be a tricky video. It will not be a game, but rather a position for you to solve, one that we haven't covered before, and a really, really weird one, one that you will be able to share with your friends at the bar or the library. You know, I don't know where you guys will be celebrating New Year's, so stay tuned for that as well. But yeah, that's the game. I really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Adam Holt, James Maybury, Lubomir Knetkovsky, Michael Hoff's Consulting, and William Fuller for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. As usual, we are always looking for that first queen sacrifice of 2023. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.